Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I'm going to work on a basic maintenance of a Shimano Corvalus round bait casting reel. These are pretty popular reels, and my customer brought two Shimanos in, relatively new and unused, and complained that there was bad drags in them. Well, I used the Corvalus as an example in the last video to show you the difference between a drag problem and spooling of braid. And braid will spool if not properly backed and give the appearance of bad drags. So while I was at it, I told the customer that there's bad drags in them. There's not bad drags in them, that it's spooling. And he said, well, while you have the reel in there, can you back the line, make it work properly, which I did. And while you have it, can you go ahead and just do the basic tune-up on them, because he purchased these from another person and wasn't familiar with the reel, so he wanted to get rid of a clean start on the way out. So I told him I would do that, and that's what this video will be today. Popular reel, Corvalus, made by Shimano. This one happens to be the CVL300. And I start by taking the side plate off. There's just two thumb screws that pull to enable you to take that off. This one looks very clean inside, so there's been no example or no reason to think that you got bad drags in this one, but let's go ahead and do the service anyway. I'm going to pull the spool first. There's two ball bearings. There's a spool bearing on this side and there's a spool bearing on the back, and we want to make sure that these are properly lubricated, so I use a reel oil, which I do on bearings. In this case I use a Real-X. There's others out there, including the ones that are provided by the manufacturers. They're all good. Just use an oil that's made for fishing reels as opposed to a general purpose oil. And then while I have that oil available, I'm just going to throw a shot on the worm gear, and we'll let that sink in as we go about rebuilding the reel. So once I do that, that's all I really need to do on the back side here. So I'm going to put the spool back in. Got a little line tangle is what's going on there. Okay, we're set on that, and just give it a spin to make sure that we've got the worm gear and everything working, which you spin by this side. This is driven off the gear side, and that's working the oil in there. Okay, so we just we oiled the two bearings. We put some oil on the worm gear. We've rotated the worm gear. While you're at it, you check to make sure that all of the teeth on the drive are there. If sometimes the reels get broken up, that the line, the level wind is not working properly, and sometimes it's because there's missing teeth on the plastic gear. All right, with that aside, we're going to put that in my parts bucket. So I use that as a general purpose place for all of my pieces and parts, so that I know where to go to look for them when I go to reassemble the reel. Okay, so now I'm going to take the nut cap off here. We'll remove the handle and the side plate to get to the gearing. Make sure that that's properly lubricated. In this case, I believe that's a 10 millimeter. It is a 10 millimeter wrench. We'll take that nut off. And if you don't work on reels a lot, I suggest that you take pictures along the way so that you know the pieces and parts and the sequence that they go in. So in this case, we took the nut off, took the handle off, then we have this little tension spring up to the star drag. I'm going to back off the star drag here. Take this off completely, because you can't push the side plate through unless this is off. And then notice the sequence of the washers that come off of this. Now there's two different ways that these washers work. You'll see a gap in the middle here. So these washers are concave washers, and they can be set up face to face where there's no gap. They can be set up back to back, and then they can be set up with an alternating between them. And all of that does is that just focuses on the strength and the sensitivity of the drag, the star drag. So in this case, these are face to face. These came off back to back. So just note that when you're going to reassemble, unless there's a reason that you want more or less star drag knob tension, just put them back in the way that they came off if you're satisfied with that. If you want more, I believe it's face to face, and if you want less, it's all back to back lines up there. Okay, you'll notice I'm also wearing a protective glove here. I like to keep the oils and the contaminants off my hand, so that's why you see that I have it that way. Okay, now we're going to take the bridge plate nuts off here to get the cap off. This side plate is secured by the two nuts here. I'm sorry, two screws. There's usually a spring assembly under. So if you're not taking pictures along the way, if you have the reel opened up already and you're trying to figure out what went where, you can always get a schematic online to help you determine what's going on the reel itself. Okay, so I just opened it up. You can see it's a brand new reel, so there's no reason to believe at all that there was any problem with the drags to begin with. So we're just going to take this up. We'll lubricate those gears. On the back side, you can see that there's just some bracing held in by the other screws. They don't need to be removed. All right, so I'm going to pull that drag assembly off, which has a ferrule on top. Then it has the drag washers, and these are like a Teflon washer. They don't need to be lubricated, but we're just checking here to make sure that there's no contamination in there, since that was his initial concern with it. There's not, so it kind of lines up this way in terms of how that washer set goes, and we'll just go reinstall that. This also has a tensioner as the anti-reverse mechanism. This is not a automatic anti-reverse. That tensioner works, so you just want to make sure that you get the oils off of the ratchet that braces against. You'll see that there's some accumulated oil on there. You just want to get that off in order to make that perform properly. All right, so now we're just going to put some blue grease on here so that the gears are properly lubricated. So we want to put one on that spool gear up top, a little coating there. And then we'll put some on the back of the teeth of the main drive gear. And you don't have to get every tooth. It'll work its way in as it's rounded, but this will just help make it smoother. And let's get that little drag gear out of there. Okay, so that goes on then. We seat that. We make sure it gets seated onto the spool gear. Next up is a round washer. Then the drag washer. Then the eared gear goes up top in this one, the eared washer. Now sometimes you'll have a drag washer set where there's something going on inside there that didn't sit properly. I think I picked up some stuff on the bench here. So the eared washer goes in the middle. Yeah, there you go. There's a little piece of something sitting on my bench. So advertisement to keep your bench clean. Okay, and then the top one goes on. And then you got this one that's got kind of a funky pattern to it. That sits over the top here, but it also holds the cup for the ferrule. And that ferrule has two teeth coming out of it, one on each side that's sitting there so that it doesn't spin. So those go on to and they lock into that washer as such. And then you simply have to put this back. I like to put a little bit of oil again on the moving parts. I like to oil my bearings. So I'm just going to oil that free spool mechanism there. And we'll just reassemble. It's quite simple, it's straightforward. But if you follow the right steps, you're in good condition. If you don't, you won't have any success with this. Okay, so here we go. We're going to put those two small screws back in that hold the plate on. Again, remember, you didn't need to take those other three screws out. If you did, easy enough to put back together. If you don't remember what that was holding on the other side, then you're going to want to go see the schematic, which will show you a burst of that. And that burst will help you. Those of you that watch my videos know I have problems with small pieces and parts and screws, and here we go. We're we're at that point in the video, aren't we, where it's usually a handle nut on a conventional reel, or it's a little stop screw or something. In this case, it happens to be the side plate screws. So I just ask you for your patience as we go put this last one in here. Okay, and then we remember coming back out now. If you were paying attention, you know that we had those 4 washers that I was explaining how they were set up here. I'm just going to test this, make sure that we got that right. I take those 4 washers the way they came out, which was the back-to-back and then the face-to-face. And then we put the star drag on. And this has to go on square, so sometimes it actually helps to start this by back-pedaling the nut to get it to the first click. Sometimes it helps to grab it, because it's free spooling at the moment. There we go. And then sometimes if you like, you can use like a needle nose pliers to hold the top there, or you can even put the handle on at this point to get that done. And remember we have a tension spring. And the tension spring is a U shape. The 2 tabs go down. Again, if you took pictures along the way, if you weren't sure of that, it would show you that that's the way it belongs. Then up top, we're going to put the handle on and that 10mm nut. And again, it's sometimes it's best just to back the nut to get it to go forward. See properly, it needs to be square. Otherwise, you're going to strip these. These are made with soft metals like brass. And I'm just having a little bit of trouble getting that nut started properly, so if you'll bear with me. Okay, there we go. I think we got it now. Nope, not yet. There we go. I heard it click that time. Okay. Then we tighten the rest of the drag down so that we don't press the handle into the star drag. Complete that. Now you don't have to over tighten these. What you do need to do is line up the nut so that your handle nut cap can get it in place, and it did there. So now I can put the finishing screw on. And then the last part is just putting this cover back on. And this cover, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to put some blue grease onto the spool, just so that the inside of the spool gear has a little bit of lubrication on it as well. Then we're going to put this back in. Now, this drive here requires, the free spooling requires that you have the interlock here. So what is best to do here is to push this interlock up. And that way you can engage it properly when you go to set your screws. I just heard the snap. That should work, but before I tighten it, I'm just going to make sure it does. And I didn't get it proper, so okay. Okay, now we got it. So you have to make sure that you reset that free spool properly, otherwise when you put that side plate on, it will not operate correctly. Alright, so now we're just tightening these 2 down. So we not only solved this customer's problem with his, I'm going to tighten the drag down. There we go. Got the line stuck in the spool. Rookie mistake. Okay, take it out again. We'll do this again. This line got caught, and when it gets caught, you can't spin the spool. That's probably what was giving me the trouble before when I went to do this. Okay, so we reset that anti-reverse mechanism. Now we should be ready, good to go. Okay, so I do a lot of reel repair, and patience is always a virtue there. There we go, we got a nice spinning reel now. Got a free spinning, back that off a little bit, free spinning drop, and a properly functioning free spool lever. And we've got, since I backed this with monofilament for about 8 to 10 feet, we now have the proper tension on a braid on the thing. So I do a lot of these videos. Anything that comes into my shop, I basically try and put there because I'm in the process of trying to share my experiences on YouTube so that future generations can do these repairs and get an interest in fixing reels. And in particular, if you just happen to have one reel, you don't have to be in a business, but just one reel, and you want to give it a go in terms of tuning it up or repairing it, then you can do that. So what did we do today? We oiled the bearings. There's a bearing here and a bearing on the spool. We pulled the drive side plate, took off the handle, the star drag, noticed the position of the drag washers on the spindle, pulled off the side plate, serviced made sure that the drags were clean. We lubricated the spool bearing and the main gear bearing. We took the oil residue off of the anti-reverse ratchet, made sure it was nice and clean, put it back together again, and this one's ready to go for another season now. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it on YouTube, and if you want to see more of these, please subscribe to my channel. Again, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for viewing the video.